Hi, I'm live now. I don't know what the timestamp is gonna be because I thought I went live like 2 times already. Um, this is what I get for not streaming in a while. If you're hearing music, which it should be quiet, it's all like YouTube audio library stuff, so I shouldn't get copyright stricken, hopefully. Um, I just like having music in the background when I'm doing things, and sometimes it can help with awkward silences. But yeah, just chilling here. I'm gonna go actually tell people on social media. Da, da, da. I am live. Make that a bit louder for y'all. Okay, share to the social medias. I'm not actually expecting too many folks. I should probably close desktop meadow because that's gonna get annoying. Yes. Just because I know I'm not a big like social media personality or channel, but hopefully this will help some folks, and there'll be the VOD afterwards. Oh right, thumbnail. Let me just go over to Canva. It's blog banners. Alright, I'm just gonna use a stuff. I looked up game engine and it's showing me car engines. Like, wow. Canva's like, do you want to make it an AI image? No, no, I don't. Okay. Um. Ooh, what happens if I look up Unity? Oh, it's just a bunch of pictures of like hands and like people, like their hands in the sky. All right, what about Godot? Yeah, that one's a bit more confused. It's like, did you mean Jesus Christ? No, no, I did not. All right. Okay, no, our trips. Uh-oh. Wait, that's gonna run the, like, specific fade thing I've got going. Alright, I actually have an idea. I'll open Godot and take a screenshot. Godot. There we go. Godot Project Manager. And then that's what I'll use for a... You hover the image exactly over... There we go. Then it'll just replace the image below. Okay. I know, thrilling things of me making oh no, it did the thing. Accidentally downloaded all 24 thumbnails. Why would you do that? No matter how many times you tell Canva, save my settings, it doesn't, like, it's never just like current page. It never defaults to that, and I never want any of the other things. Like, I'm, like, I'll generally make a Canva file, and then, I'll edit from there. Oh my god, I didn't actually... I'll do thumbnail stuff another time. I think this is some amount of time. Won't be showing my face today. Hopefully. Okay. Well, we'll also be doing a bit of like quick overview. So about now, let's kick it off. I did some of the intro stuff. So, let's not do that. Anyways, hello. This is my desktop. I am turning down the music. Okay. We are talking about Unreal and Godot and differences from Unity. And like some of you may have seen on my social media, if you're on Blue Sky, basically I have this slideshow thing where I'll be adding notes as I go through. But first and foremost, hi, I'm Olivia Wertheimer. This is my channel, Nerdy Unreal Dev. It's an Unreal tutorial channel. I have a bunch of tutorials that I've made in the past. It's sporadically updated. Fair warning. But it's sort of an ongoing thing I've had for a while. And sometimes I like to do live streams like this. So what we're covering, brief rundown of the Unity situation and what we know as of streaming for those of you who are confused about why I'm even doing this. Unreal Engine good to knows and differences from Unity. Basic engine rundown, honorable engine mentions, and some where to find the slides and resources. So a bunch of things I cannot humanly, get everything, but I will be keeping an eye on the chat. Hello, disgruntled gamer cat. Glad you made it. Welcome. Hope you stick around. If not, there's gonna be a VOD later. But yeah, I'll be keeping an eye on the chat, not just for... Yay, thank you for subscribing. For moderation reasons, though I've got, like, the Stream Elements bot and all of that stuff. Doing some moderation. But yeah, hello. So yeah, I'll be keeping an eye on the chat for questions, especially as I show. various things. Um, and yeah, so as for the Unity situation and what we know, um, okay, just pull this up so we're looking at something else. Um, yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Unity made an announcement yesterday. No, the other day. The other day. I know days of the week. Um, where they were like, hey, for games making over X amount, we're going to give you a runtime install fee. So they're going to charge for installs. And they also were like, hey, we really, really want you to use uh, their some AI thing, generative AI thing that's probably like scanning your assets or something. And they got rid of the plus tier, which then forces game devs to either use the free personal tier or the 1800 a year tier, something like that. It's like 185 a month. Um, that's yeah. Their poor comms team on Tuesday. Like, I don't blame the comms team because it sounds like a lot of decisions from up high that Unity folks were like, hey, please don't do this. And the upper management did it anyways. And then the comms team were left trying to put out the bonfire of game dev responses with a garden, not even a wildfire. Because, yeah, this would bankrupt a lot of devs. Obviously, not most game devs aren't gonna hit that $1 million. That's the unfortunate thing, actually. Most game devs won't even hit that $1 million like threshold. Though I forget exactly the exact numbers. It's high stuff, but it does kind of put a wrench in things with like publisher deals and contracts, and it's just not good. And just today, um, there was a lot of expectations there'd be like, backtracking and backpedaling and all that. Um, no, not yet. Instead, if you're like a mobile game with ads, so like a very specific type of game and monetization strategy, you can switch to Unity's level play service that is not as robust as the competitor to get rid of the install fee. So it's literally forcing devs to like switch to their own thing that you just know like is not as robust, half finished, and they probably won't like finish any of the features that they announced for it. That's kind of how Unity Dev has been the past few years. Um, yeah, yeah, definitely an upper management like thing. Um, so as of September 14th, what's going on is now there's a lot of indie studios who have like a whole bunch of tools made in Unity, kind of scrambling, and a lot of devs wondering if they should even bother learning Unity. Um, and I just want to be clear that switching a game, especially a game several years into development to another engine it's not impossible, but it's expensive and you're not going to get the exact same result. So I sympathize with folks who are facing this decision because even if Unity backpedals and gets rid of the runtime install, we don't know like how long they'll actually keep that, or a lot of trust has been broken. So I really sympathize with the devs who are just in a rock and a hard place now. For those who have a few more options, at least with like future games, that's what we're here for. And yeah, so obviously, as you can tell by the channel name, Unreal is what I mostly know. But, you know, for fairness, and also Godot's pretty cool. So I'll share what I know about Godot. Um, but let's get started. Um, so, as you can see in my kind of messy desktop, I do have Unity. I have used Unity recently for the first time in like 6 years. Uh, but yeah, so you have the Epic Games Launcher. Um, First thing, will always remind folks about this. Every month, they have a free for the month. You just like add the asset to cart and it's free. You have it forever. They can't change that. And Unreal also has a permanently free, so that those resources within themselves, really helpful. They also have, they've been expanding their online learning. Some of these are old and some of these are new. But it's ways to learn about the engine through projects and guides, and the Unreal Engine YouTube channel is actually pretty good for learning how to use the engine. It's actually a good resource, better resource than their documentation, because Tim Sweeney's motto is that the documentation should be the code should be the documentation. But you go into a library, you'll have the engine versions here. Right now it's got an exclamation point because 5.3 is out, and it's like, why are you still on 5.2? And your projects will be like in this section, and this is your vault where you have the various assets from like, I think I've only paid for like a couple of assets. A lot of these are just like the free for the month and the permanently free. So 5.2.1, that's Unreal Engine 5. 4.27.2, that is Unreal Engine 4. So, and if I were to launch, computer's gonna be cranky. Sometimes it takes a bit. The spinning circle of doom tells you the computer's doing something. So does Task Manager, which is okay. OBS isn't too bad right now. Sometimes OBS gets a little greedy. So does the games launcher. And yes, I still use Snipping Tool. I like Snipping Tool. Windows cannot take Snipping Tool from me. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so this is what it looks like. Down here, where it'll be like, we're loading 5 bazillion shaders. So that is a note about Unreal. It's a heavier engine than Unity. And this is where it has a similarity. Unity and Godot have a similarity in that they're both rather modular. You add plugins and tools based on the type of project you're doing. So you start out with a fairly light engine, and then as you add to it, that can vary. Unreal Engine gives you all of the features and most of the plugins at once. So it's got more. It's gonna take more room on your drive. I mean, 2 engines, that's 100 gigabytes. 2 engine versions, that's 100 gigabytes. So that's roughly 50 each. think UE4 is smaller. But yeah, and it's also, uh, so space-wise, it's fairly large, and it's gonna take more resources. So I'll show Task Manager in a bit. Well, I can show it now. So nothing too bad from Unreal Engine. I can close the launcher because I showed you what's. Oh yeah. It's Unreal Super. When it's compiling shaders, it is very slow. I've got, so for people wondering what I'm running, I've got a 1060 and 32 gigabytes of RAM and an i7. Yeah, i7. Yeah, this is. So, this is what I've got going as far as specs go. And, you know, it just means like I can't do ray tracing. If you have a 1060, you can't do ray tracing. But, well, you can do the software ray tracing or hardware ray tracing, whatever it's called, that does ray tracing off of your CPU, but it's more like a mimicry of ray tracing, and I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyways, here is the project browser. It's actually very similar to the Unreal UE4 one, if anyone's seen it. And it looks in like your main project folder. But yeah, so if you're seeing this for the first time, you have a blank blank template, as well as first person, third person, top down. Unreal's very 3D focused. They do have 2D, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, they also have film stuff. Architecture is a huge element. Automotive, product design, simulation. So like flight simulator, I guess, or military simulator. So go in here. We'll do a blank project. And though, like the first person, unlike Unity's first person, it's actually pretty good. In fact, my interactive, like my digital museum project, I just took away the gun from the first person. It's literally the first person code, just without a gun. Like, it actually works, as does the third person. You don't have to hunt down the one good first person controller that works. They got it. It's already there. But anyways, so blank project. What's going on here? So Blueprint is what Unreal's visual coding system is called. And if you're making a project, a C++ project, they're assuming you're going to be in your code, your IDE, so your Visual Studio, and not really working with it, and vice versa. But you can always add C++ to, like it says here, you can add blueprints to a C++ project and C++ to a blueprint project. It's more just how it's set up and where they're expecting you to be building. Because I believe a C++ project, they expect you to be building from the IDE, which is relatively simple, and I'll be able to show that even with a blueprint project where they're just expecting you to build within the engine. Target platform, desktop or mobile. I think when I installed it, you can have it, so I'm not sure what's going on with consoles and Unreal, actually. Obviously, you can port, but the default desktop, mobile, quality preset, starter content, and then you can click ray tracing. I'm not bothering. All right, project name, live stream. Hit create. And now it is creating the project and wanting more shaders. So the reason Unreal is so big about shaders and loading them is because it's primarily a 3D engine. Now, that said, there is a Paper 2D plugin, which is Unreal's 2D sort of like whatnot. Yeah, time to compile 2,000 shaders. Yeah, well, hopefully it won't be too that bad since it's just a starter pack. But actually, well, I'll do paper. Oh, pfft. Yeah, you weren't even seeing all of my assets. Okay, so what Paper ZD is they got an Epic Mega Grant, and I think this is now free? I'm not sure. But this adds more, like animation graph support, integrated top-down isometric, 2D state. So this is like really helping with like animation stuff. So basically you can do 2D within Unreal. And I'll show a little bit about how to do that and how to do 2.5D. It's built primarily for 3D. Like someone else had to make an extension, a sort of extra plugin for Paper 2D. Yeah, this is how you can sort of sort out. Okay, you're not gonna have too much. Okay. But yeah. Oh, and fun fact: once you download an asset, you like if it says cache size, it won't even need to re-download it. Like it's on a hard drive somewhere, so you do need to keep an eye on how much of this stuff is locally cached. But they do keep it around. Yeah, a lot of this stuff is... There's some plugins you install the engine. Alright, there we go. Okay. This is... So they default you into an open world scene. This is Unreal. This actually isn't the default layout. So this is a lot of things. So let me pull up the default layout. Okay. We can even look at the crankiness. Oh, sure, now you're not that cranky. Oh, whatever. Unreal. This, by default, in Unreal Engine 5 is very big. For some folks that works, for some that doesn't. Thankfully, you have some options. You might have noticed you can have a default. So this is the default. You can have the UE4 classic layout. You can actually save a layout. But yeah. So you have all your docking and whatnot around. Content drawer. This is where you're going to have folders and stuff. And they now have it so it pops in and out. But you can tell it to dock and layout. Starter content. This is an optional folder, but can be very useful because it comes with like some basic props. So you have door frame, materials. Some of this is old, like has been part of it for a while. Some of this, like the architecture, that's more new. I don't remember that in older things. Shapes. What's funny is their default thing has still uses their starter content still uses Cascade. Cascade's depreciated. Like it's not gonna get. That's the old sort of thing. But another benefit to the starter content folder is through this folder you can get an idea of how your typical folder structure works. So maps, that's another word for like scenes, your various levels, whatever you want to call it, blueprints. So you can see some examples of, so you have ceiling light, wall sconce, so you can turn it off and on. They even have some like audio they give you. But yeah, so you have all of this kind of laid out like that. Usually I'll do outside of that folder like blueprints, VFX, and this can get messy and whatnot, but sort of to show you what the structure is. And what I'm doing is I'm right clicking. That's how I'm getting this menu, is right click. And so actually remembering my PowerPoint, important notes. You know, some folks might think this is silly, but you know, right click in content browser to bring up asset creation. That's what it's called. S to bring up asset creation menu. You can press the end key. This is a fun thing. In this level editor, if you just that's why I wanted the starter content. Though we don't need this. So let's we don't need this big, you know, open world, blah blah blah. Let's go to basic. There we go. There we go. What's going on here? Whee! Wait, what is going? Oh, that's a piece. Okay. All right. Here's your couch. That is literally just the chair just stretched out. It's just the chair stretched out. I swear. Game dev tip: you can make couches by stretching out chairs. That's hilarious, because that's exactly, if you don't know, this is exactly the kind of stuff devs will do to fill out an environment. Oh, we need a couch? I'll just stretch out the chair. Anyways, so you want to get this on the floor properly? End key. Boom. Hell, let's get this thing. Boom. Okay, that might not have been placed where I thought it was. Anyways, basically, as long as two static meshes have collisions, if you press the end key, it'll just like get on the it'll go down until it hits the colliding mesh, which is very useful for level design. Every chair is a couch, but every couch is not a chair. Exactly. To the collision, I can. That's why autocorrect is helpful sometimes. Mesh below. You think it might be silly to add that? So many people don't know it's a thing. Another thing that's a thing that not everyone knows is you can use CSV. So Excel docs, it's something that those save into to make data tables. This is useful because then you can use like Excel or Google Slides with your design team, and they can like put in information about you know, like, oh, this is like our abilities, and it causes X amount. They can put all of that there, and then the programmers can take that doc, export it as a CSV, put it in, and the designers don't even have to touch the engine or the source control, which like, let's be real, programmers get very protective of their source control. I've gotten protective over it too. Sometimes there's a limit to how many people you want to have access. But that can be, but yeah, it also means like even though you can make edits within the engine, you have an outside engine place to make edits. And you can even like write like narrative and stuff in those. I mean, data tables, it's literally, if you don't, so a data table, I think it's in Unity? I think. Yeah, you can straight import CSV. There's tutorials that more specifically talk about that sort of thing. I am not a programmer. I can do some blueprinting. I can wrangle GitHub. I understand what a data table is conceptually. Do not ask me to... I mean, I do have to write code to implement that in a project, but don't ask me what a matrix is and how I use it in code. There we go. That's a good way of putting it. But yeah, that's the kind of thing you'll see under, like, it's a blueprint thing, it's a code thing. You'll see a lot of, like, various types of assets you can make under here. Input, which is separate from UI. I just scrolled down, by the way. Use the scroll wheel. Oh, widgets. Oh, those are fun. Okay. So I mentioned 2D. Now, there's two ways of doing 2D. You can put a sprite into the level, and you can actually set it up so that, shoot, I should have set up some sprites ahead of time. The sprite will stay within a specific, like, Z plane, Z order. It'll stay in a specific area. And then you don't have to do anything fancy to the camera, because all you have to do with images, and I feel like this might make some people scream. Say you have like a pixel art thing, okay? In fact, why don't I? I've got some pixel art things. This will be fun. Okay. So I'll grab the little dandelion. Okay? I'll grab a dandelion. First point, don't ever do that. Okay. Make a folder within textures called sprites. Let's just bring in the little dandelion I got. Now, automatically, it blurs. We don't want that. So what we do is we go and we find, should be here. Where is it? It was a button. Last time I had to do this. Advance, compress. I swear I know what I'm doing. Not LOD. It's not within the camera. That's the interesting thing. It's not within the camera. It's within the image itself. So what you're seeing here is a lot of options. So level of detail, downscaling and MIPS. So that's why you want to have the... did they change this on me? Darn it. I hate when you're like, I totally know what I'm doing, and then it's like, wait a second. Where is there used to be a button. I could have sworn. Okay. No, no, it's not that. Okay, sometimes we go, oh right, I know what I'm doing, and then we scroll through and realize that there were changes. So then we go, because I can't actually show everything. Then we go, UE5, pixel perfect option. So one of the first options is the documentation has gotten better, and I'm suspecting that what I thought was default may have actually been involved in a plugin. Ah, there we go. Apply paper 2D texture settings. It was right there this whole time. Sometimes Unreal is like that. You're looking around for this thing, and you're like, oh, it was right there this whole time. Anyways, once you apply the paper 2D settings, where it's compression interface US user interface 2D, it doesn't really do the MIPing. There we go. Texture group. That's what I was missing. It's no longer a button. It's a texture group, and you want 2D pixels unfiltered. So I feel like that is important enough to make 2D pixel art sprites. And that's it. That's how you get it to be pixel perfect. Like if I now have this thing. So if I just grabbed, so up here what this is if you want to play the game. Add level sequence, that's your cinematic stuff. New empty blueprint class. Making blueprints. Each level has their own blueprint, which you'll find open level blueprint. But basic shapes, plane. We're going to turn it around. So E is rotate, and it automatically over here you have snapping by degrees. So when dragging around, it automatically snaps. Rotation and scaling. And you can either turn it off just by clicking that, or you can change the degree. Camera speed, you can also move that up. So when you're... So I just right click, I'm holding down right click and pressing W ASD to move the camera around. This isn't the actual in-game camera, this is like your viewport camera. So yeah, if you're in perspective mode. But yeah, see this plane? We're just gonna Oops. I pressed F on the sky sphere. Not what I meant to do. F. There we go. Boom. It's not well lit. Oh well. Let's turn this around so it hits the directional sunlight. Boom. Ta-da. I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm ragging on Unity. It blows my mind how, like, simple this is and how complicated Unity made it. Like, I still can't get over that. But yeah, and if I right-clicked this, so I can create a sprite. If extract sprites, so if I have a sprite sheet, I could extract the sprites and it'll figure out all of that. I think I should have paper ZD on both UE4 and UE5 right now. But yeah, so now it's a sprite, and then if we open up the sprite editor, so if we had a tile sheet, we could edit source region. You can edit the collision of the sprite, so maybe you want it smaller or whatever. View. You can actually have specific, so this is the default paper 2D masked inlet. You can add more. You can add, depending on the material you're using, yeah, additional textures. So if your material has a slot, so has a thing for normals, you could add normals right in. Over here, collision, so 3D, physics, collision geometry type, rendering, all within here. And you can... Here's the little dandelion. Can I? Haha! I pressed end. It worked with the sprite. But yeah, and yeah. And so some of you might be noticing asterisks here. That's just saying needs to be saved. Save selected. Saving the level. Should have actually saved it in place. And the details panel, so this is the outliner. And the details panel, if it's got, like, if what you dragged in was a blueprint, you could see, like, if it's a blueprint and the various components that are part of it, lighting, collision, physics, a lot of important stuff. You can even recolor the sprite just from right here, so you can give it a tint. And, you know, folks are probably hearing me talk about plugins and wondering where that would be. So that is up here in Edit. So you have Editor Preferences, Project Settings, Plugins. Yeah, not every plugin you need is actually installed, but they have a lot of plugins. So you can edit depending on what the project is. If you need, like, so Common UI is their new system for UI that, like, keeps it all the same. They talk about it with, like, their Lyra project. But you can just search. So if I searched, so Paper 2D is installed. So I'll click on Paper ZD, restart now. And now it's going to restart, and now it'll have the Paper ZD plugin. Yeah, that list will automatically show you all plugins that are installed with the engine. If you want more plugins, generally you would go to the asset store, which has a bunch. That's the install the engine ones. But if you do need, like, if you've got, like, a custom plugin or What'll be common is in a group project is because the plugins are installed with the engine, you have like it's not captured by the source control unless you make an exception for the plugins, or people have to go to the folder. So I'm in the project folder for Livestream, and actually, it's not in the project folder. It's in the whatever. Where did I even? I'm a very organized person. There we go. You would go into the engine wherever you saved it or installed it, plugins, and you would install, and you would just like paste the folder in while the project is closed, and next time you start it up, you have the plugin. It'll be installed. That's so there is that. As for I mentioned some stuff with IDEs, which if you don't know, that's like Visual Studio Code. Now, if you open the project, if you make it a Blueprint project, it's not going to automatically have Visual Studio files. So you have to right-click on the project, like File, and generate Visual Studio. You need to add... Oh, what? This is... Interesting. That's new. That's new. Alright, let's do what they tell me. That's not helpful. Well, basically, if you have the right source files, I don't know why it's yelling at me, you are able to generate those source files. Yes, it's denying me. It's like, no, you just said you're not a programmer. You don't get to show programming stuff. Yeah, though. So, yeah, that's where you can generate files when it's not being cranky at you. But in tools, you can make a new C++ class. Oh, look, CSV to CVG. Look at that. That's not what I was talking about, but another use for CSV. Yeah, you have a lot of your stuff here. Blueprint debugger. I got distracted and I was going to mention widgets. So widgets are their UI, how they do UI. It's a Slate thing. God. Yeah, they have specific widget things. That is not the specific. I always forget what the naming convention is for widgets. But for those wondering, BP underscore is what you do for Blueprint. SM underscore, yes, you can giggle, is what you do for static mesh. SK underscore is skeletal mesh, so any mesh that's got animations. NE is Niagara emitter. NS is Niagara system. Just for folks to know. And yeah, so you can like build but this is there's specific videos out there on this, and I think I briefly cover it in one of my main videos. But yeah, you can use this for making buttons and loading screens. This is what you use for like cool. Yeah. This is an example, actually. Cool. And so you have the designer, so that's where you put in all your elements. And then in graph, event graph, so you do your, so you can do, you can hard code this stuff if you really want. Would not recommend it. You have designer, you have event graph. Don't need to hard code anything, and it's easier on your designers and artists if you don't. I'm just gonna recommend not, because yeah, it's easier on us if we have the visual element, and a lot of the basic functions for widgets are actually like right in the like visual coding event graph. So event graph is what they call the visual coding, and you can zoom out with your scroll wheel, pan by right click. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff you can actually do with visual coding. But yeah, and do it right here. It's actually kind of simple to do things like make a pause menu and quit the game. Surprisingly easy. So yeah, this is, and you can actually make an entire game just within widgets. So there's a template I have for clicker games, and it's all widget based. And it's actually a great way to kind of learn widgets. But yeah, because you can tell it to like show when you start the level, and you have buttons just right here. So yeah, can just make an entire game out of widgets. That's an option, especially yeah, with my mushroom clicker game. That's actually all widgets. The template was, I got it for like a game jam, a chill game jam, but yeah. Yeah, this is the template. It does cost money. It's an alright template. But yeah. What I use for the mushroom game, it's all widgets. So, there is an option. One thing I know surprises things. So in Unreal Engine 5, to go to various modes, so you can go to landscape mode, foliage, mesh paint, modeling, all of that, via here. Landscape, I have videos on landscape and foliage, as well as a bit on, it used to be called, the geometry tab. Now I guess it's brush editing. Okay, place actors panel. Thank you. Yeah, so in the place actors panel, say we had this thing. Now, this is a static mesh. Just a static mesh you can use for gray boxing or whatever. This you can also use for gray boxing. But you can also manipulate it. So that's what the brush editing is, because this is considered a brush. This is considered the geometry brush. And I went over some things, but okay, let it change to the local. So you can extrude. And now you have two planes up here. It's very plane based. You can technically select vertices and whatnot, but it's pain. And it's useful for gray boxing, for various, for making architecture, etc. It is limited though. And you have to make sure like If I hadn't switched back to edit, I would have extruded again. So it has its limits, but it's also very powerful. And once you get used to its system of extruding, very easy to use, I find. And I know it has made a game designer friend of mine just like absolutely stunned that it's, yeah, this is right here. And you can put materials on individual sides if it wants to behave for you. Sometimes it doesn't want to behave for me. Like now. But yeah, and then you can just like, once the material actually is on there, you can like pan it and rotate it. Yeah, surface materials. I don't know what's going on here. But yeah, allegedly you can put materials on it. You might need to. Yeah, there you go. You have to deselect it, and then you can select that panel, and then you can like scale it. So you have to deselect it before you apply material, and then gotta remember to hit apply. Do that all the time. Apply. Boom. Boom. So yeah, and that also means you can have different materials in different sections. So those are some things. I didn't really cover so many of the differences, but I think the key differences from Unity is that a lot of this is within the engine already. You don't have to hunt down Pro Tools or whatever. It's included. The like, you know, a lot of this is either already included or easily added. I think the key differences are just there's fewer tools for 2D because there's not as much 2D support like officially, and Unreal is very much seen as the like fancy 3D, and I think they want to keep it that way. But like another plugin I did actually spend money on allows for animating sprites within the UI, and that like there are things you can improve. You can like, if you're working with 2D, I would recommend the next engine I'm going to talk about for a bit, Godot. But that said, Unreal's not too bad for 2D, just because you can still. The widget system is incredibly powerful, especially for the types of games where you have those sort of like canvases and buttons, a lot of buttons. And you know, I think it's a really great engine for 2.5D because you can easily add, like, you don't have to hunt down specific camera settings or whatever to get the pixel perfect. You don't have to do that. And like, you don't even, like, if you have, say, a material texture for your 2.5D game, you can put like the pixel thing, the texture group 2D pixels, and it'll leave it. It won't blur it. So that can be really helpful with like material creation and decal creation, and just Another thing different from Unreal, you'll notice I barely touched. So this is the default lighting. You can have a blank level, but like you can just choose to have the sky sphere right in there. Or I'll put like unlit and then, oops, that's a sphere. Yeah, I got used to the default Unreal thing. So unlit, and then you have your lights just right here, and boom. Grab a camera. There is a cinematic camera. I'm still not sure what the difference is between cinematic and regular camera actor. You can actually pin this to the corner. I find that really helpful. Boom. Yeah, and the materials, right click, material. It's the visual programming thing. But because it's the visual programming thing, this is essentially, your materials are your shaders, in a way. This is honestly why I get confused about, you have to know shader language. Because if you work mostly within Unreal, you get really used to essentially like making like working with materials and master materials and specific, like maybe animating materials, maybe some post-process stuff that can be expensive. But yeah, you don't really, like, you can dive into shader language. And you can add effects to the camera. You can add post-processing. You can do a lot of things just right within, like, this is the camera post-process, which would be separate from. Anyways, that's a bunch of Unreal things. It is mainly for 3D, but I hope I was able to show that like there are some 2D elements and you can actually get kind of creative with them. Yeah. And I'll share resources and whatnot, and I am a resource, both my channel and my social media. But all right, let's move on from Unreal to Godot. Or Godot, as some people might have been saying. I say it Godot. I assume it's like the French way of saying it. So Godot. Godot, as I mentioned earlier, is a lot like Unity in that it's more modular. And what's interesting about Godot is, like, for one thing, you just saw me open it from a folder. So it's an exe. And let me... I just realized that I've had the wrong description and title for like the past like half hour or whatever. Okay, let me change that real quick. Whoopsies. That must have happened when I had to change the code. Like the, yeah, streamer stuff. All I'll do more changes to that later. But right, yeah. So Godot, for those who don't know, is an open sourced game engine. There are some pros and cons to that. Pros is it's free. It'll never do the stuff that Unity pulled. The cons are it can only export to mobile, and I think that even then it's only Android, and desktop. And even then I think it's only PC. I don't know if they have the ability to export to Apple. They might. And of course, exporting to Linux. That's a given. That's a given with open source. If it's open source, assume there's some Linux involved. Yeah, so these are some example games they're showing of stuff you can do that have been made. You can see it's both 3D and 2D. The 3D isn't as fancy as Unreal's, but they've done some great work improving it over the years. I will give devs kudos for that. And here you even see a little like 2.5D game. So yeah, and you would just download here. But if you need to if you need to port your game to a console, you're going to have to go by a third party. How much that costs, I have no idea actually. But yeah. And then, so learn, you'll get to the Godot docs. And I love this. So you have manual, community, some community aspects, class reference for you programming people. They also have, getting started. So tutorials right there. These docs are seriously well done. I love them. Like, gold standard. Yes. Oh, no. Okay, well, here's me showing my museum. Ta-da! It's still in alpha. I did actually recently work on it and work on redoing where it is so it doesn't look like that. So it looks a bit better. Oh god. Yeah. I'll do an actual dev stream another time. There, I'm not a liar. There was showing the museum. But yeah, so you download that, and then you just run Godot from there. That also means that Godot plugins are specific to each project. So if I made a new project, I do like how they have you switch. Get to see my disaster, and I misspelled table. Alright, create folder. Streaming. Okay. No. Select. And over here you see renderer. So they do have different renderers. Forward plus, and this can be changed. Mobile, compatibility. So depends what you're up to, what it needs to be. Looks like it recognizes I've got Git and GitHub and all that, so it's like, hey, Git? That or it's the only option. One of the two. Yeah, I've got Git bash and all that. Now you start a project, and it opens quickly because there's essentially nothing here. The thing about Godot is it's very node-based in an interesting way. So everything is based off nodes and GD script. What is GD script? GD script is Godot's primary script, so kind of like how GameMaker has their own programming language, and Unity once had its own programming language, actually. back when I was in college. And so does Godot. It's called GDScript, and I actually put at the end of my thing a link to one of the resources I put in these slides, which will be on my Ko-fi store, is on itch.io, there's a Learn Godot app that you can use to help learn GDScript. And it's part of a huge paid project, but the app itself is free, which is cool. I have never actually made a game in Godot, so a lot of this, no clue about. But it is very interesting, and file system. So down here, and it's where you might have like where you would make your folder system and all that. So materials and scene. So saving project. You'll be able to find there's tools, customize engine build configuration. So you can, if you're not really doing a 3D game, you can remove 3D stuff. Install Android build template if you're doing an Android game. Project settings. Oh, right, something to keep in mind. So I'm running a high DPI monitor. In other words, big monitor, big density. If you are doing the same, what you will have to do is right-click Properties, and then I think the settings, the settings are override system. You'll have to do that, otherwise Godot is tiny. But here you have your project settings, debug, editor layout, so you can save various editors. They do have some editor settings, and I think you might even be able to deal with the deep display scale and all that within these settings. It's just easier to do it the other way, because otherwise you're trying to start your project while squinting, and that's never fun. So all of that. Over here, asset level. This is actually really important because, like I mentioned, Godot is modular. You have the basic things to make a game. But much like Unity, if you want, I don't know, if you want to be able to code in Lua, supposedly Godot, you're able to code in C++, C#, Lua, Ruby, whatever. You do all of the official plugins and all that are here. And these are specific for Godot 4. Godot 3 might have more just because it's been out for longer, but also it won't have the latest 3D stuff. But you can get plugins to help you with input, and I know there's one for ink. If you're in one of those narrative designer people who likes ink, a sprite importer, that'll be important for a lot of the main things. Sprite painter, Kanban. Oh, there's ink. Yeah. You also have some AI bullshit, unfortunately, because it is open source, so anyone can make things, regardless of what the original devs think, which I don't know what the original Godot's devs' opinions are on it. Yeah. But this is where you'll find all of that. But it's not the only resource, because it wouldn't be. Another major resource is this repo, Awesome Godot, linked in, I'll have it linked in the slides, and I'll also link these resources in the description. So this has projects and plugins and resources. So, yeah, and Godot newsletter, all of that. Uh, but yeah, you can just like, I mean, sometimes I'll be like, itch Godot plugins. There is someone who, they haven't updated it in 2 years, but like Godot plugins. Yeah, and I'm sure if you like just like went on Mastodon and asked, "Hey, does anybody know any good Godot plugins?" You'll get a ton of recommendations and like a bunch of people being like, "Here's my plugin." Yes, this is me riffing on Mastodon folks. Love y'all, but also. So yeah, they do have. I wish I could show more for Godot, but unfortunately, I haven't really used it. I am open to using it and open to being familiar with it. Uh, Finger guns. But yeah, so you can change up here the render. Yeah, so. You know what? Have a bit of time. Show my one of my honorable mentions. There was like a Humble Bundle thing a while back with all of these RPG makers. I think Fantastical also does them. And you just pay once and then you don't have to do rev share or whatever. You made your RPG maker game. I don't know what there is in way of console support. So that could be a factor. But yeah. Look, you can make TTRPG maps. Like that. I'm totally not planning on doing that. And here, like, new project, tools, so whatever plugins, and you have your, so this is the character generator, which you can add sprite sheets to, but you can generate characters, event searcher. What's interesting about RPG Maker is you don't have to know much code. But with 2002 and 2003, there's no code. XP, you're able to do like plugins and things with Ruby. XP and VX, those are with Ruby. MV and MZ are with JavaScript. So, so closing up because you can hear my voice getting hoarser and hoarser. Drink something. Alright. Basic engine rundown. And I'll fill out the stuff at some point. Unity. Tiered plans and now runtime install fees. Programmer oriented was once the indie darling. Like, if you were going to make indie games, you wouldn't even touch Unreal. You would go straight to Unity. It was known for indies. I say was once the indie darling because honestly, I think it's been dropping off due to like a lot of unfinished features, and its UI is so made by programmers. Like, I'm sorry, programmers, but some of you don't know UI and UX, and that's okay. That's why that's a separate role. But also, Unity really needed UI and UX updates like a decade ago. So it is actually, like, I find Unity very difficult to get back into because, like, even Godot with some, like, it's a very different way of doing things from Unreal. I'm just like, oh, okay. Like, you just... It's UI and UX just kind of make click for my brain. And Unity's is very... very much expecting you to be writing, like having visual code open constantly. Um, C# programming, have to hunt down plugins for basic features, 2D and 3D oriented. So it was good for indies because I had both 2D and 3D, but you wasn't expecting much. But unfortunately, the CEO just hates game devs. Allegedly. Uh, Unreal cost, so free to use, 5% rev share on revenue over 1 million quarterly threshold. That is a long way of saying what'll be even more confusing. Basically, if you make $1 million in one financial quarter, like from your game, like this is also per game. If game one makes like $1,050,000, the rev share will be for $50, not the first million, and just for that game. So if you have game two makes $750K, no rev share on that, and you're only doing 5% on the amount over $1 million. It's kind of convoluted. I spent way too much time reading the Unreal TOS because I thought it would be important once upon a time. Wasn't that important, but at least I understand what they're saying with their rev share thing. And the numbers actually have changed in the past year or so. I think in response to Unity being Unity, and to kind of lure in more of the indie devs that are leaving Unity. I find it designer and artist friendly because it's a lot of visual programming, it's a lot of design tools. Also, one difference between Unity and Unreal is the Unreal devs have shipped games. Like, Fortnite is essentially a proof of concept, but it also means that the people at Unreal understand what is needed to ship a game. That also means that Unreal is functional for shipping games. It's also really easy to just build a game. Like, unless you're having weird bugs, so it's not always easy to build a game. But, they're, like, they take note of, like, things that happen later in production that cause issues with shipping out. And, like, that's a part of Unreal, is that. Godot's devs also, like, ship games with Godot. I think there's a lot of people who, like, will make Godot games and game jams, and we saw on the site various games. So it's also being made, I think, with that idea in mind. Unity never shipped a game, and a lot of people who've used it have noted that, like, it'll work great for the prototyping stage, and then you get to, like, shipping, and especially porting to other consoles, and then that's when you'll get, like, weird bugs and incompatibilities and all sorts of issues. And yeah, I may have a bias here. Anyways, so Unreal comes with a lot of features and plugins, which pro, you have all of that in the engine. Con, it requires heavier PCs. That said, what is meant by heavier PC, my only issue with Unreal is that I tend to have to run UE5 in like a mid-range and with no ray tracing. The shader thing, compiling, can take a bit, even if, as Disgruntled Gamer Cat mentioned in the chat, you're like running a 3060. I think part of that is on CPU cores and RAM. I could be wrong though. But yeah, I showed my specs, so Unreal requires heavier PCs, so you can't use it on your poor, falling apart 2018 laptop. But a lot of gamer PCs can easily handle it. C++ programming. Yay! I'm just wrapping up, so I'm glad this whole thing was informative. Um, yeah, so Unreal uses C++, uh, which has differences from C Sharp. Don't ask me what they are. It's also mostly 3D oriented, but like I pointed out, it can use 2D, and there are elements that are honestly, I'm still not over having to hunt down specific camera settings and do specific shader stuff just to have images pixel perfect. I'm still not over that. Um, Godot, free, asterisk, because console porting may cost money. So use his own script, open source darling, so like all the Blender bros, they also love Godot. That does mean it comes with the open source community, which I'm sorry, open source community folks that are watching. I enjoy open source programs. I enjoy Godot and its documentation. I enjoy Krita. And like I've fixed my PC with a version of Linux that was like on a flash drive. Some of y'all get a little evangelical with how you're pushing it, okay? That got me to run away from Blender, and it does push people away from programs like Godot. So for those outside of that community, there is that to a certain extent. But if you're just using it and like hunting down plugins and you're not like in all of the forums and whatnot, you'll be fine. Another thing about open source is there's this thing where they can't get the console API for whatever reason can't be open source, and so like it can't operate under an open source license, so they can't distribute. It's a complicated thing with licensing, but all that means third parties have to help with console porting. Mostly 2D oriented, but devs have done an excellent job adding in 3D. There's a lot of like demo videos and whatnot, where they're essentially it looks like they're trying to play catch up with where Unreal is, and the amount of work that, and probably they'll try to go beyond where Unreal is, whatever that means. I don't even know how Unreal can go beyond where it is. But they've made some massive strides within like the past year alone. So, it's constantly in progress. And yeah, the best, most beautiful documentation. But some honorable mentions, RenPy, whatever you call it. Free, I think it's also open source, which means it also has that console porting issue. Primarily for visual novel, and if you're just doing a visual novel, you don't need to know programming. But Python knowledge lets you do fun things like whatever was going on in Doki Doki Literature Club. I did play that. Or, turn it into a different game genre. 2D focused. It's for visual novels. Those are generally 2D. RPG Maker, I briefly showed it. Makes pixel art RPGs. You can make other games. Apparently Yume Nikki is an RPG Maker game, unless I'm mixing it up with Game Maker. Either way, depending on if you get it like in a sale or bundle, 25 to 130, or you're just buying it straight up. But once you pay that, you don't have to pay anymore. I mean, you can pay more to get like its DLCs, which is just more game assets. And you can find it on Steam. You can find it off Steam. You can find it on, you can find it on consoles. Yeah, minimal coding needed. But if you want to do fun stuff, depending on the version, you have Ruby or JavaScript, primarily for pixel art. I think you can use other art types, but it's primarily that style. Game Maker, tiered, from free to $800 a year. What's interesting is if I'm just show its tiers because I don't really agree with it, but it is what it is, and it's still better than Unity's tiers, if we're being honest. So Game Maker. This is their site. Okay, here we go. Pick a tier and make a game. So free to use is Game Maker, and you can export it to their like GX games. Only place. And only format. Creator, so yearly $50, includes desktop exports. Indie, $100. Now you can do web and mobile. Enterprise, you can now do consoles. And they have the full list of like what you get per each thing. And yeah, so PS4, PS5. There's an asterisk. I don't know why there's an asterisk. Maybe because you need a third party. I don't know. But all that said, it depends on your needs, how much you need to pay. And I've seen it on Game Maker on like Humble Bundle, or they'll like do like 6 months of Game Maker. I think Yogg's Cast also might have had something Game Maker related in their Jingle Jam. Basically, like with RPG Maker, you can sometimes find deals on various like bundles. Undertale, among other well-known indies, was made in it. Has its own language, but it now has visual coding, which is interesting. When I was in college, it did not, but it was also cheaper. And these are just a couple resources I put in. Yeah. So, all that said, where to find me? You can find me on my site. And, like, yeah, of course you can find me on my site. The contact page, I just have, this is essentially my link tree, only I didn't make a separate link tree. And then the Ko-fi and Throne, you can give gifts, or you can check out my itch page. So I hope this was helpful. I'll have the slides with some additional notes and various I'll have these on my coffee store probably some point either later tonight or tomorrow, and I'll have more things in the description as far as like resources and whatnot go. And like, you know, I hope this was helpful. I'm certainly open for doing like more streams with if like folks have specific questions. We're just making more tutorial videos, if that would be simpler. But yeah. So, hope y'all have a good one.